Need President Chavez, and does he need the U.S.? It seems that no one wants to publicly defend Venezuela's leader. Calls to Citgo were not returned, and Joe Kennedy's Citizen Energy Group, which gets low-cost fuel from Venezuela, rejected our invitation to talk tonight. The only one we could get to leap to Chavez's defense is the chairwoman of New York's wing of the Communist Party. Elena Mora is also a contributing editor of the Political Affairs magazine. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. And Steve Groves is with the Heritage Foundation. Elena, let me start with you. What has President Chavez done that makes him positive for the U.S. and positive for Venezuela?
Well, I mean, I think we have to start with what President Chavez has done for his own people. Because
sure.
After all, they're the ones who elected him, and not just once, but 3 times elected him president. And what he's done, I think he's done some amazing things. His government has launched big programs to deal with problems of unemployment, of poverty, of homelessness, of illiteracy. That's what they're doing with their oil revenues, which, by the way, are not about to be nationalized. The oil industry in Venezuela was nationalized before Chavez. So it's not about that he's about to nationalize.
Well, there is foreign
oil.
investment in the country, and they're talking about trying to limit that, I think is what we're saying. But
right.
Steve, do you agree with that assessment?
Well, it has been nationalized for some time, and as you said in the lead up to this, 17
right, but do you agree with what he's done for the people? The argument Elena made.
The people of Venezuela are going to have nothing to thank Hugo Chavez for when everything is said and done. Nationalization is never the way to go to have a healthy and robust economy.
Well, that's just
I
mean,
not only is he nationalizing oil, he's going to nationalize natural gas, electricity, telecommunications. Governments running companies is not the way to go.
Well,
we've seen it fail in Cuba. We've seen it fail in North Korea. We saw it fail in the USSR. He will, if he continues down this path, will end up in the dustbin of history with the rest of those failed nations.
Elena, go ahead.
I mean, it's absurd to list all the places where nationalization has failed when here in the United States, for example, the American people face privatization of many things. In fact, before the segment started, they were talking about Illinois selling in the lottery and states selling roads and highways and stadiums to corporations as a way to generate revenue. Well, I think the question is, and the Venezuelan people, by the way, I think the first thing is that they have the right to decide whatever they want to do with their oil, gas, or whatever it is. It's not Chavez as an individual. He was elected.
And I don't know, Elena, though, I was in Venezuela a short time ago, and there were a lot of people living in very extreme poverty. It was practically a military state. You know, the people with jobs either worked in the military or for the police. It didn't seem like they were doing so great.
I don't say that they're doing great. Chavez has been the president since, for what, 6, 7 years. 7 years to overcome decades of the policies that the other guest is talking about. For example, privatization was a big push in Latin America in the 90s and before the 90s. And what did it result in Venezuela? When Chavez became president, 80% poverty. So, the fact that there's still poor people, well, how could there not be? There's such a short period of time. In our own country, we have millions of poor people, and we've been having capitalism in the United States for 200 years.
Well,
so
Steve,
the idea that people are unhappy, I don't think it's not fair to say, 7 years, he hasn't solved all the problems. Forget it. They re-elected him. We should not forget. He was re-elected in December by a large margin.
I want to talk about the oil industry, though, a little bit more. I mean, Steve, I'm not sure we do need Chavez. Just looking at the oil industry, oil is fungible. If he sells it to someone else and refuses to give it to us, it frees up that country's oil for us to buy. But if he closes off Venezuela to outside investment, Venezuela's industry won't grow. Isn't he just hurting his own people?
In the long run, he'll hurt his own people. He'll hurt his own oil industry. And eventually, he'll have to sell all of his oil to the United States. It's a close country to the United States. That's why we like to buy our oil from there, in addition to countries in the Middle East. And they've got a large reserve there. The oil will be there long after Hugo Chavez is long gone.
But isn't the problem, in the United States, our problem when it comes to oil, we have some real problems. What are the problems? One, we have oil corporations with incredible profits. We have another problem, which a lot of people are worried about. We have dependency on oil and the environmental issues that it raises. So it seems to me those issues are much more important than what Chavez is going to do with their oil industry. They're not saying they're going to stop selling to the United States. So
well,
the problems
I mean,
that
they have actually raised that threat in the past, but I'm not sure it's right to blame the oil companies. They're just trying to serve their customers and make a profit. That's what business is all about.
Well,
that's what
blame
Chavez
the
is
oil
trying to do
company
too.
for making profits.
No,
No one was crying for the oil companies back when oil was at $10 a barrel and they weren't making the profits that they are making now.
I believe
and
one
Hugo
of the
Chavez
things
is the long opponent of keeping oil prices as high as possible, fixing the prices and not varying from them, cutting production to keep prices high.
But my point is that, you talk about is what's going on in Venezuela, how does it affect the American people? Well, I think this hysteria about what Chavez is and what he's going to do, he's repeatedly called a dictator, which is really kind of absurd considering he was elected.
Well, let's not go into the fairness of the last round of elections.
The point is
the Carter Center study on whether that was a fair election has been roundly.
Let me ask each of you one more
ridiculous
question, kind of what we started with. Is he bad for U.S. businesses, whether that's right or whatever? I mean, is he bad for any? It seems like it, right?
He's bad for any U.S. businesses who are intending to invest in that country, or who already have investments in that country, like Verizon. They put a lot of money into investing into a telecommunications company
Elena,
there.
I'll give you the final
and now
word.
Chavez wants to nationalize it and not pay fair cents on the dollar.
Go ahead, Elena, you got the final word.
I'll tell you what I say about, if they need to nationalize the telecommunications industry to serve the people of Venezuela who have huge needs in that area, the country's a third world country.
It's not to serve the needs of the people.
Well, I think that's exactly what it's for. We should be more concerned about what Verizon's doing here in the United States, where, for example, it's resisting American workers' attempts to unionize. So I'd say that's more important to us.
Okay, thanks to both of you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Coming up,